सदाशिवसमारम्भाम्
समारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम्
शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम्
अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे
अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम्
वन्दे
वन्दे
गुरुपरम्पराम्
गुरुपरम्पराम्
ॐ सहनः
ॐ
भवतु
सहना भवतु
भुनक्तु
सहना
सह
भुनक्तु
वीर्यं
सह वीर्यं
कर्वावहै
करवावहै
यस्मिनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै
विद्विषावहै
ॐ
ॐ
शान्ति
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 शान्तिः
शान्तिः
Om Tat Sat.
ॐ तत्सत्
So we are in the Brahmanandavalli, the second chapter of Taitriya Upanishad. We were on the first Anuvaka and we were halfway through. So if you look at the Anuvaka, we will start from 1 to the third line. I will chant and please repeat. Tasmadva etasmat atmana akasha sambhutah
तस्माद्वा एतस्मादात्मन आकाशः सम्भूतः
akashat vayuh
आकाशाद्वायुः
vayor agnihi
वायोरग्निः
agnir apaha
अग्नेरापः
adbhyah prithvi
अद्यः पृथिवी
prithivya oshadhayah
पृथिव्या ओषधयः
oshadibhyo annam
ओषधीभ्योऽन्नम्
annat purushah
अन्नात् पुरुषः
सवा एषः पुरुषवन्नरसमयः
स वा एष पुरुषोन्नरसमयः
तस्येदम् एव शिरः
तस्येदमेव शिरः
अयम् दक्षिणः पक्षः
अयम् दक्षिणः पक्षः
अयमुत्तरः पक्षः
अयमुत्तरः पक्षः
अयमात्मा
अयमात्मा
इदम् पुच्छम् प्रतिष्ठा
इदं पुच्छं प्रतिष्ठा
तदप्येष श्लोको भवति
तदप्येष श्लोको भवति.
So we saw that first is the arrival of Akashaha, a space element. And now he says Akashat Vayuhu. The next element is born. All this we have already seen in Tattvabodha. Okay, now here, remember that when he says Akashat Vayuhu, we have to recall that the Nayayika Vaisheshika philosopher, for him, Akasha is eternal. It's not born. It's aja. It's a nitya padartha. So this Akasha Vayuhu, in that one compound word, the Shruti negates the view of the Nayayika philosopher. And Shankara explains that this Vayuhu has to be taken as Dvigunaha Vayu. A Vayu is born which has two gunas. Again, all this is care of Tattvabodha. And Shankara specifically wants us to remember that one guna is the own guna, and one guna is inherited from its cause. So, Svena Sparsha Gunena, he says. That Vayuhu, Svena, has its own unique guna, attribute of Sparsha, touch. And what about the second guna? Akashat Purvena Karana Shabdena Gunena. The Shabda Guna is borrowed from its Karanam, which is Akasha. Right? Akasha is Karanam for Vayu, and Akasha's Guna is Shabdaha. Therefore, Vayu borrows the Shabda Guna from Akasha. And it's got its own unique guna of Sparshaha, touch. Therefore, Vayu has two gunas. And the guna which is common to the Karanam and the Karyam is called Samanya Gunaha, right? So, Shabda Guna is Samanya Guna for Akasha, but Sparshaha is Vishesha Guna for Vayu. So, Samanya Guna is common to Akasha and Vayu, but Vishesha Guna is specific to Vayu. If you look at only Akasha in isolation, then the Shabda Guna is Vishesha Guna for Akasha. As far as Akasha is concerned, actually the distinction is not very uh, relevant because Akasha is the firstborn element and therefore it has its own guna which it has not shared with anybody else. But even then, for the purpose of comparison, we can say that for Akasha, Shabdaha is Vishesha Gunaha. For Vayu, Vishesha Guna is Parsha and Shabda is borrowed, Samanya Guna, because it is common. Samanya means general, common to both Vayu and Akasha. Okay. Then comes Vayor Agni. So we have to remember all this is part of Tattva. Now, when you say from Akasha Vayu was born, we have to remember that what is the Karanam for Akasha?
Brahman.
Brahman or Maya essentially, right?
Sahit
Brahman plus Maya. So Maya is the Karanam for Akasha. And now we are saying that Akasha is Karanam for Vayu. Then how can you say? Because Shruti says many times that from Brahman alone everything is born. So then you have to word this thing very carefully. You have to say from Brahman Akasha is born and from Akasha Rupa Brahman. Brahman in the form of Akasha, Vayu is born. And similarly, from Vayu Rupa Brahman, Agni is born and therefore, and so on. And therefore, whenever you say Brahman is the cause of the entire chain, you have to define each member of that chain, each karanam of that chain in the form of Brahman. That's why Akasha Rupa Brahman, Vayu Rupa Brahman, Agni Rupa Brahman, Jala Rupa Brahman, and so on. Right? And therefore, you can say very safely, Brahman is the karanam for everything. That's one note. Another important note is if Akasha and Vayu have got Karana Karya Sambandha, cause effect relationship, and also Vayu and Agni have got the same Karya Karana Sambandha. We must very carefully remember we are not talking about the Sthula Akasha, Sthula Vayu, Sthula Agni. This is something that's easy to forget. Sthula Akasha is not the cause for Sthula Vayu. I hope you remember. What is
because
the
that is post Panchikaranam.
yes, because Panchikaranam comes. And therefore, whenever you say that Akasha Vayu, it is the subtle form of Akasha, the Tanmatra. So Tanmatra Sukshma Akashat, Sukshma Vayu, Sukshma Vayus, from Sukshma Vayu comes Sukshma Agni, and so on. So this, please carefully remember, the Karya Karana Sambandha, the cause-effect relationship that exists only between the Tanmatras, between the subtle five elements. There is no Karya Karana Sambandha between the gross elements. One careful note. which we have to keep away because it is very easy for us to, forget the fact that we are talking about tanmatras over here. Now Shankara continues in his commentary, Vayoscha svena rupa gunena purvabhyam cha trigunaha agni sampurtaha. From Vayu, Agni was born. What kind of Agni? Trigunaha Agni, with three gunas. Now here, two gunas are Samanyam, and the Vishesha guna is what? What is the Vishesha guna for Agni?
Rupa.
Beg your pardon?
Rupa.
Rupam. Rupam is Vishesha guna for Agni. The other two belong to its Karanam, Vayu. Therefore, it is Samanya Gunaha. Then Agner Apaha and Adhyaf Prithvi. Adhya is again for Apaha. So Adhyaf Prithvi. Prithvi literally means the earth, right? The planet. But remember, in this particular, whenever you talk about Prithvi over here, Prithvi represents matter, any matter, not just the earth, any matter. So matter is Upalakshanam, general usage of a word for all matter which is solid, generalization. And then Abhyaya, Svena Gandha Gunena Purvaischa Chaturbihi Panchagunaha Prithvi Sambhutaha. From Abhyaya, from water, Prithvi with Svena Panchagunaha, with five gunas are born, out of which its own guna is what? Svena Gandha Gunena. The fifth guna is unique to itself. It is Vishesha guna, it is Gandha, and the four gunas are all belonging to the Karanam, and so on, right? So, when we are understanding this, we have to constantly remember Tattva Bodha. So, understand that the first to be born are the Tanmatras, and then only the gross elements are born. Okay. The next line you can see is Prithivya Oshadhayaha. Okay. There's a very careful line of distinction between the mantras up to this line, before this line, that is, up to the line of Adbhyaf Prithivihi and Prithivya Oshadhayaha. Can you guess what the distinction is?
That's still the Sukshma aspect, this Tanmatras. And henceforth is
The Sthula aspect begins here.
Very good. So up to Prithvi is the Tanmatras. Sukshma Pancha Mahabhutani. From this Prithivya Oshadayaha starts the Sthula Pancha Mahabhutani. So you have to carefully mentally note that in between these two, the entire Panchikaranam has been done, which is not mentioned in the mantra. Right? So Shruti assumes that in between these two lines of these two mantras, Panchikaranam is over. And we have studied Panchikaranam, so we know what all to supply in between these two. Right? Therefore, Prithvi here, now, this second Prithvi, Prithivya Oshadaya, is different from Adbhayav Prithvi. In what sense? In that Adbhayav Prithvi, it is Tanmatra. Here it is Thula Prithvi. Right? Why? Because it is only from the Sthula Prithvi that Oshadaya, plants are born. Therefore, Prithivya Oshadaya, from this Sthula Prithvi, all forms of plants are born. Right? And Oshadi has the general meaning of medicinal herbs. But here it is to be taken as all plants, not just those which are medicinal in nature. Then Oshadibhyo Annam, from the plants, food is born. A very interesting note here, why all food should be vegetarian only. Annam is food. And therefore, Oshadibhyo Annam is born. From the plants, food is born. Annat Purushaha, from food alone, the bodies of the beings are born. It is not just human beings, all beings. Right? And Purushaha has several meanings. So here Shankara writes a very clear commentary saying that here Purushaha has to mean somebody who has got heads, hands, legs, etc. Why does he give the clarification?
Purusha uh, has also been used for Brahman, for
Yes. Purusha is also used for Atman Brahman, consciousness principle. So therefore, Shankara wants to say that this Purusha is not that. Don't say that from this food Brahman is born. It is the beings, living beings which have got hands and legs, all, etc. They are born. So Purusha here means Thula Sharira. It doesn't mean male also. Because it can Purusha is generic here for anybody who is male or female. Okay, with this, the Srishti ends. Srishti Prakaranam ends. Why does it end? Because this Thula Shariram, Purushaha, is Annamaya Kosha. Right? Annamaya Kosha is the start of Panchakosha Viveka. So if you take a Prakaranam, the technique of analysis using the Panchakosha, it can start only when Srishti ends. So here, up to here is Srishti, that Annat Purushaha. Up to there is Srishti. Right? And Shruti itself explains. In fact, Shruti itself explains here what is Purushaha. Sava Purushaha Anna Rasamayaha. And what is Anna Rasamayaha? It is Anna Savikara. Savikara means Anna Rasa Savikara. What is Anna Rasam? Anna Rasam is the essence of that food. And if you remember Chandogya, you should remember Chandogya also. What does it mean? What does Anna Rasam mean?
does it mean the male sperms and the female ovum?
Yes, very good. So Anna Rasam here means Shukram and Shonitam, right? The male and female eggs, which is the essence of the human body. That is the body comes from that. And therefore, since that arises from food, therefore Anna Rasamaya, Anna Rasamaya Vikaraha. It is the modification of the Shukram and Shonitam, born out of these two, Shukram and Shonitam, the male egg and the female egg. Okay, I'm just muting her because somebody's voice is keeping on coming. Somebody wants to say something, please unmute yourself. Okay. Now, remember that you cannot take the interpretation that essence of the food or that food can be converted directly into a body. And that is why when we saw Chandogya, we saw that Annam becomes the male seed. It enters the body of the father and becomes a seed. It enters the body of the mother and becomes the egg. Right? Thus, the Shukram and Shonitam in the bodies of the mother and father put together are called Anarasaha. Male seed and the female seed put together are called Anarasaha. At the time of conception, they join together, and therefore the child's body is said to be a modification of Anarasa. Anarasa Vikaraha. Change or modification of Anarasa. So here it is, remember that it is Annamayaha. Should not be confused with Annamayaha. Mayaha means perfect. Anna rasa mayaha means a product born out of Anna rasa. Anna rasa means the male and female seed. So a product born out of Anna rasa is the body. Therefore, Shukram and Shonitam Karyam is the physical body of this child. Okay, so this is Bhautika Shrishti, Pancha Bhautika Shariram. The Panchabhutas have turned into Pancha Bhautika. Now the question is, in this whole, discussion, Shankara defines Purusha as Manushya Shariram. He doesn't take other bodies of other beings. And that might be strange because this entire discussion applies equally to other bodies also. But then Shankara explains himself. He says that because he's taking Purusha as the human body, because humans are the only species on this earth eligible for Vaidika Karma, Chitta Shuddhi, and Jnana. Why? Because your free will, remember that free will is an integral part of Sukshma Sharira. And therefore the question may come up, the dog also has free will, the cat also has free will. Is it not? But the answer is that yes, the latent free will, the potential for free will is there in all subtle bodies, including that of animals, plants, everything. But the manifestation of free will can take place only in a human body. And Shankara says, therefore, since it requires free will to do Vaidika karma, to get Chitta Shuddhi, to come to Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, therefore, in this discussion, he is taking the meaning of Purusha as human being. Right. In support of this, Shankara quotes one mantra from the Aitareya Aranyakam, not the Upanishad, Aitareya Aranyakam. So, without going to the mantra, I'll give you a brief summary of the mantra. It says that the mantra says that only human beings have the three qualifications necessary for doing Vaidika karma. What are they? One is the ichha, the desire to do Vaidika karma. Why would somebody have the desire? Why does anybody have the desire to do Vaidika karma?
Shastra
An
mandate.
inclination towards dharma.
Well, that is definitely one of the desires. But the majority of people,
For moksha.
moksha also is one of the
Artha kama.
reasons. Artha kama. Majority of the people, they want only worldly results or at the most results of going to Swarga and stuff like that, right? We saw all this in Tattva initially. So desire is there for worldly things or good body in the next janma or going to Swarga, stuff like that. So human beings have that. And therefore desire is there. Not only desire is there, the capacity for doing Vedic karma is not there in other beings. And that's why you don't see a pet dog doing karma, doing Jyotishta Mohama or something. And the third thing, the permission, the approval to do Vedic karma is given by Veda only. And Veda gives the approval only to human beings. Therefore, that mantras of Aitareya Aranyakam, it says that only human beings have these three mandatory qualifications for doing Vedic karma: desire, capability, and Vedic permission. And because of the free will, which can be manifested or which can be made use of only in a human body, this human can visualize and plan for the future He knows that moksha is something which he wants to attain. Therefore, he can choose to do the karma with a view to get chitta shuddhi so that he is able to study the Vedas and finally come to jnanam and then moksha. On the other hand, Shankara gives a very, uh, you know, potent line over here. Animals, he says, also have knowledge. Right? This desire to do Vedic karma for a human being presupposes some amount of knowledge. That there is a Veda, that if you do certain karma, you'll get certain results. All this knowledge is presupposed. And therefore, he says, Eva vihi vijnanam. Animals also have knowledge, but their knowledge extends only to satisfaction of hunger and thirst. Instinctive actions, knowledge sufficient to do instinctive actions are there for an animal also. Okay. Remember, all this is a commentary on what? Annat Purushaha Sava Esha Purusho Annarasamaya. So, as I said earlier, with this, the Srishti Prakarana, the commentary on the uh, creation is over. So, the first question is done. And this is part of the second question, how to know Brahman. And now comes very, very elaborate answer to the second question. For the second question, a brief answer has already been given. Do you remember what it was?
Yes, the vritti part of it.
Which was
The
it?
yo veda nihitang
O Veda Netam Goaya Parame Vyoman.
parame vyoman.
Right? That is the brief answer. Right. So, which means basically that Brahman has to be recognized as the Sakshi in everybody's own mind. So, everybody recognizes the thoughts. I know what thoughts come in my mind, and I know what thoughts are going from my mind. The arrival and departure of vritti, manovritti, of thoughts, I know. What I don't know until Shruti tells me is that there is a ever-present consciousness because of which I can recognize the arrival and departure of thoughts. So this ever-present consciousness, which does not come and go, which is a non-arriving, non-departing consciousness, that consciousness is the reason why I know that some thoughts are coming and some thoughts are going. And the same consciousness also makes me aware that there is a gap. If there is a gap between two thoughts, between the arrival of one thought and the departure of that thought, and before the arrival of the second thought, if there is a gap, the same consciousness is the reason why I know that I had a thought which came and went, and I had another thought which came, but in between the two thoughts, I had no thoughts. That gap between two thoughts, that also I am aware of. To give you a small example, when you chant a mantra, especially short mantras, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Narayana, you are sitting in meditation, right? You keep on chanting, and if you are doing it correctly with the required amount of uh, concentration, what happens? You will find that the speed of chanting slows down over a period of time. Have you noticed?
Yes.
And as it slows down more and more, at some point, especially if you're doing long-term chanting, maybe 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes, you will find that when you finish one chant of the mantra, before you start the next chant, there is total quietness. That is the gap between the arrival and departure of thoughts. How do you know that there was a gap, that I was chanting this and I stopped, there was nothing before the next thought came? This is the same consciousness which illumines that. That consciousness, which doesn't come, which doesn't go, but because of which I know what comes, what goes, and I know the gap between those two. That consciousness is Sakshi, the witness consciousness. Okay. And therefore, the following portion is the detailed answer to the question of how to know that Sakshi Chaitanyam, which is I, the Atma, which is I, Brahman. How to know Brahman? That was a question. The following portion is the answer to that. And how to know Brahman is presented in using various techniques in various Upanishads. Each technique is called Prakriya. So here it is called the Pancha Kosha Viveka Prakriya. And Taittiriya Upanishad is famous, is very well known for this Prakriya. So whenever you use Pancha Kosha Viveka, remember it is this Prakriya. So we had the original Tattva telling you this, but there we didn't say that Panchakosha, the study, is not to understand matter. The study of matter, Pancha Anatma, not Pancha Pancha Bhutani, is to enable us to understand Brahman. As what? As the Sakshi Chaitanya in me. Okay, so here, the next one is what? Says, Tasyedam eva shiraha, ayam dakshina pakshaha, ayam uttara pakshaha, ayam atma, idam pucham pratishtha, tadapye, tadapyesha sloko bhavat. Right? So the Panchakosha Viveka starts here with this particular mantra, Tasedam evam eva shiraha. And it continues all the way up to the fifth Anuvaka. So it's a long portion. Now, to know Brahman, there is only one way of knowing Brahman. What is that? I have to know I am that Brahman. Aham Brahma Asmi. Aham Brahma Asmi. That is the only valid knowledge of Brahman. And when you say Aham here, what does that Aham refer to? When you say Aham Brahmasmi, what does that Aham refer to?
Arsi
And
Sakshi
the
Chaitanya.
self.
No. Aham refers to the Sakshi Chaitanyam. What is Sakshi Chaitanyam? So when we talk
Oh,
about Atma or consciousness, you can say Atma reflected in the mind. That is RC. Okay. But what is it that enables you to know the RC?
Sakshi Chaitanya.
Sakshi Chaitanyam, which is the OC, right?
OC
But
content in the body.
yes, so very carefully note that OC in general, if you look at the all pervasive, all pervading Brahman, I cannot know at all, right? Even though I am the all pervading Brahman, I cannot know. What I can know, and this is what Shruti tells you, that that all pervading Brahman, because of its all pervading nature, is also there in your mind. We are not talking about reflection of OC. We are talking about the original OC, which is also there in the mind. And therefore, you can, for the purpose of understanding, you can think of it as OC enclosed in the mind. It is not possible to enclose OC. Okay. But for the purpose of understanding how it functions, you can think of it as OC enclosed in the mind. That OC enclosed in the mind is Sakshi Chaitanya. That is the only reason that consciousness which is being reflected is the Sakshi Chaitanya. The, we say OC is reflected, but which OC? The OC which is enclosed in the mind, that is reflected in the mind. So Sakshi Chaitanyam reflected in the mind is the Chidabhasa. I hope I'm making the distinction clear. This distinction is extremely important to understand.
But Acharya-ji, if the OC is indivisible, in that case, within mind, when we say, is the same OC which is in others' minds and everywhere.
Yes.
So ultimately, is it not the same saying just OC?
Supposing I put one small glass and one big vessel on your table, is
Mm-hmm.
there space in both?
Yeah,
It is
yes.
the same space, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the utility of the small space is it different from the
Mm.
big space?
Yeah, outside, from outside, yes.
Like, see the difference?
Yeah, from outside.
Not
Mm.
outside. Even if you
Ah,
pour water
yeah,
into
from
the
outside
glass,
means.
you can't pour the same water into the, I mean, from the vessel into the glass. There are different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Utility wise, there is a
They are
difference in
different.
Sakshi and Brahman.
Yes, yes, thank you.
It's very, very important to understand the difference because it's a very common question. What you say, it's a very normal misunderstanding also.
Om sir, you have told us many times, but does this mean that I have RC in my mind and there is the OC in my mind, which is a part of the all pervading OC?
No. The
I
moment you
want
say
to,
part, you are,
not part,
there are
which
no
is
parts for
no,
OC.
no part. I don't mean part, but just like Munmunji said just now, it is the OC in the mind which is Sakshi Chaitanyam,
Correct.
and that which the is reflected, the
The reason
Atma
is
which is
because the OC in my mind will not be the RC for you,
yes,
right?
yes,
You have to remember that at the functional level,
yes.
there is a difference. But at the fundamental level, there is no difference. But we are talking about functionality only because RC is functional. And therefore, RC is not the reflection of total OC. RC is the reflection of Sakshi Chaitanya in your mind.
Acharya ji, RC is the Chidabhasa.
Yes, RC is Chidabhasa, Chit Abhasa, as a reflection of the consciousness. Okay. And therefore, when I say Aham Brahmasmi, I am claiming what? That Sakshi Chaitanyam in my mind is not different from total OC. That Sakshi Chaitanyam is what you call Atma also. And therefore, that statement, Aham Brahmasmi, is equivalent to saying that Atma, I the Atma, I am Brahma. It's a Atma Brahma Aikyam, claiming that I the Sakshi am not different from I the OC. Now, what is the problem with this? Sakshi is
Multiple, which seems.
no. You guys are, I'm trying to tell you, Sakshi is in its fundamental level not multiple.
Hmm. Yes, yes,
RC is multiple.
yes, yes.
In the understanding of Shastram, your thinking process has to be hammered into shape. Otherwise, this small doubts will remain forever. So whenever you use Sakshi, you have to say Sakshi, the original consciousness, which is seemingly enclosed in my mind, which is being reflected in the mind. Right? That is the understanding. Now, therefore, you have to start from where? You have to start from Annamaya Kosha only. You have to come to mind a lot later. And because the Annamaya Kosha, the Sakshi, and Brahman, These are all very, difficult concepts to understand. Therefore, there is a travel in small steps. Thus, there is a travel from the prakriya takes you from the body to the various koshas, to the Sakshi Chaitanya, and to OC. This is the Pancha Kosha Prakriya. And the method that is used is called Arundhati Nyaya Darshana. Okay, this is the method used. What is that method? This is a method available in Nyaya Vaisheshika logic, Indian logic, right? So, what is Arundhati?
Star.
It's a star,
It's a very
It's
small
binary
star.
star.
it's a very small star in the sky, right? Now, supposing we are standing on my terrace, and I will tell you, I'll point out and say there is the star, right? Now, you will not be able to see because there are lots of stars. So you will ask, which one are you pointing at? So this nyaya, I'm explaining the nyaya's exact wordings. So this nyaya presumes that there is a tree outside the terrace. So you look, I say, do you see the tree? You say yes. Then I say the tree has various branches. Look at the branch which is pointing in the northern direction. Do you see? You say yes. Then I say, do you see a star at the very top of the branch when you're looking at the branch? You say, yes, I see. Then I say, do you see a star which is to the right of the star at the top of the branch? You say, yes. Then I say, do you see a small little sparkle, a twinkle near that star? You say, yes. I say, that's Arundhati. Right? This is called the Arundhati Darshana Nyaya. What does it mean? Various steps are there. You can't directly come to the final answer. So remember that in this prakriya, therefore, attention has to be paid all the steps. The very first step up to the last step. Like just as I point towards the tree, your attention is with my finger, and then so on to the tree, the branch, and all that. Similarly, in each of these steps, you have to look very, very carefully. In the same way, when Panchakoshas are taken, you have to study each Panchakosha very carefully. The final destination is Atma only. And therefore, Upanishad says, first come to Annamaya Kosha, and it uses a particular technique. You say that Annamaya Kosha is Atma. What is the final destination? It is Atma. Therefore, you take the first available part of the Panchakosha Kriya, Prakriya, which is the Annamaya Kosha, and you say Annamaya Kosha is Atma. So you have reached Annamaya Kosha. Then once you are steady over there, once you have understood that yes, I am in Annamaya Kosha, I am studying Annamaya Kosha, then you have to negate Annamaya Kosha as the Atma and go to the next Kosha, which is Pranamaya. Therefore, first Annamaya Kosha is the destination as Atma. When you change from there, the word Atma is important. Okay. When Annamaya Kosha is the Atma, that is the first destination. When you change from there to Pranamaya Kosha, because Pranamaya Kosha becomes the destination, Pranamaya Kosha becomes the Atma. What does Annamaya Kosha become in that case?
Anatma.
Anatma. So whatever becomes the Atma, everything else becomes Anatma because there are only two things, Atma and Anatma. And this is the process. From Pranamaya, you move further, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and so on. As you move, you will find that your mind is becoming more and more refined. By the time you reach Anandamaya Kosha, what has happened? You have reduced everything to Avyaktam, potential form. And therefore, you begin to understand subtle concepts. This Avyaktam is a very subtle concept. And therefore the mind begins to understand what is avyakta tattva, the principle of not being visible. And therefore Upanishad will start in this prakriya by saying, take the physical body as the Atma. Right? Anyway, most people think that they are the physical body. Atma literally means what? I. So if you take physical body as Atma, you are saying, I am the physical body, which is the current state of most people who have not studied the prakriya. Okay? Right? You don't take it as kosha. Okay, in the beginning, there's a slight distinction here. I am not saying take Annamaya kosha as yourself. You have to say this physical body, sthula shariram, is I. Why do I say that? What is the subtle distinction between saying I am the physical body and saying I am not the Annamaya kosha? Very, very subtle distinction. I am the physical body means you accepted that Sthula Shariram Atma. I am the physical body. Once you have moved to Pranamaya Kosha, again, the use of the word Kosha is only for understanding. Once you have moved to that Pranamaya, you are saying, I am Pranamaya. The word Kosha, remember, indicates what? Anatma. And therefore, when you say, I am Pranamaya, you are then saying, body, I am not the body. And therefore you say, I am not the Annamaya Kosha. The Kosha is a downgrade, you know, from the Atma status. Because Kosha means Anatma. And therefore only after you move to Pranamaya Kosha, you can say, Annamaya Kosha is not Atma, is not me. Because you have downgraded it from Atma. Now you are accepting Pranamaya as Atma. Okay. Okay, before we go further, this entire section here, Panchakosha Viveka, is the Vyakhyanam, the detailed exposition on Yo Veda Nihitam Guhaya Parame Vyoma. This is part of the Rig Mantra which we quoted in the beginning. Right? So he says now, Tasyedam eva shariraha. Tasya means Annamaya Atmanaha. I am taking the Annamaya, not Annamaya Koshaha. I am talking the Annamaya as Atma. And then what do I say? Idam eva shariraha. Tasya means in this phrase, tasya means Annamaya. Annamaya Atma. I the body. And tasya of that body, idam eva shiraha. Right? That this is the head of the Atma. And this Atma is known as the Shiraha of the Atma. When we talk about Annamaya Atma, we are talking about 5 limbs. Shiraha, Dakshina Pakshaha, Uttara Pakshaha, Atmaha, and Pucham. Okay, these are our 5 parts of each of the Panchakoshas, not just of the Annamaya Atma. Just remember the names. Shiraha, Dakshina Pakshaha, Uttara Pakshaha, Atma, and Pucham. Okay, we'll come to each of these. So in the case of Annamaya Atma, these parts are very clearly visible because the body is physically visible. But in the case of the other koshas, these are avyaktaha, therefore you have to imagine. Pranamaya kosha, pranamaya for example, is what? Vayu tattva. Vayu does not have a particular shape. And similarly, other koshas don't have particular shape. Hence, therefore, only in the Annamaya kosha, Annamaya, that is physical body, you can point out these parts. But in the other four koshas which I come to, again I'm saying kosha only for explanatory purposes, okay? But when you come to each kosha, it is the Atma for you. It is you yourself. And for all these four koshas, you have to imagine the parts. They're all kalpitam, imagined parts, visualized parts. So he starts with, this is the head of the Atma. Then I am Dakshina Pakshaha. So Dakshina here is not south. Dakshina is right. Why?
When I
When we
face the
face the
sun,
east,
right side is the south.
When you face east, right side is the south. Okay, so that I am Dakshina Pakshaha. So that you have to imagine that I am pointing out to the right side of my body. Right? And of course, Shankara wants to make it very clear. And he writes in his commentary, Dakshinam is where your right hand is located. So right side of the body. That is southern direction because you are facing the east. Then I am Uttara Pakshaha. He points to the left side. This is the left side of the Atma. I am Atma. Right? Now here I am Atma. It means the central portion, the middle portion of the body, which is connected to every part of the body. Then idam pucham pratishtha. Here, idam means the portion below the navel. Pucham literally means tail, right? And you have to, why tail? You have to think of the monkey. The monkey is supported by the tail. Therefore, pratishtha. The tail supports. Hence, the lower part of the body from the uh, torso downwards, which is the support for all the other parts. This is the meaning of Ucham Pratishtha. He comes up to the middle, and then you see the rest of it is Pucham. The rest of it is the tail, which is the support for the other parts. And then this Annamaya, Shariram, is supported by the tail of the body. And Shankara says, what about the other koshas? The only covering which has got a physical shape is the human body. And therefore, Shankara says that you have to therefore take it that the shape of the pranamaya, manomaya, vijnanamaya, etc. are the shape of this, are in the same shape in the physical body. And he gives an example. He says that molten metal has no shape. He talks about liquid copper. Okay, he said molten metal has no shape. When does it take a shape? When it is poured into a mold. Like supposing in the mold of, say, Krishna Bhagavan. And that mold is made out of what? Usually out of clay, so it can be broken. And then you pour the molten metal into the clay, and that molten metal, which has got the liquid metal, which has got no shape, it takes on the shape of the mold and becomes a statue of Krishna Bhagavan. So this is the example he gives. He says, in the same way, we have to imagine that we have a physical body which has got a particular shape. The pranamaya kosha has been poured into that physical body. So it has taken on the shape of the prana of the pranamaya kosha. Manomaya kosha is poured into the pranamaya kosha. Vijnanamaya kosha into the manomaya kosha. Anandamaya kosha into the vijnanamaya kosha. Therefore, all the four koshas have taken on the shape of the physical body. Okay, then he says, Tadap Yesha Shloko Bhavati. To support this, there is a Rig mantra. Right? You have to note that every Anuvaka will end up in Tadap Yesha Shloka Bhavati, which means Tadapi Yesha Shloka Bhavati. To support this stand, there is a Rig mantra. And that is why every Anuvaka, you will find that it begins with a Rig mantra. Okay, that is the way in which it is done. Okay, with this, the first Anuvaka is complete. Any questions?
Acharyaji, this last but one line where it says Ayam Atma. So what does
Atma,
that
there is the middle portion, the torso. Don't
Okay,
take it as
so
I.
Ayam means that middle
This is
portion.
the Atma. This is the
Okay.
middle portion. Everything is like
And
Tassedam, Evam Shariraha, Ayam Dakshinaha, Ayam Uttaraha, Ayam Atma. This
and
is the
Acharyaji, that Adbhyaf Prithvi. So what does Adbhyaf?
Adhyaya is
Adbhyaf.
Apaha, water.
So Adbhya means Apa.
Apaha, water.
Okay.
Okay. So I thought we would start the second Anuvaka today, but again, that is not possible. So Rituji, now I finally tell you that we will start the next Anuvaka in the next class.
It's okay. We understood it's Brahman and the Valli, and it's Acharyaji explaining.
Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purna
Purnamudachyate
Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your
Thank you,
patience.
Shivaya. Thank you, Acharya.